I went to quite a few events over the 9/11 10th anniversary weekend, and I picked them basically looking for events that would be about healing, reconciliation, and really about moving the discussion forward. You know, where do we go from here? One of the events I chose to do was to attend the Ground Zero 360 exhibit at the Field Museum, which was a collection of photographs and artifacts from Ground Zero, where the Twin Towers came down. And I was actually kind of dreading that one because I was really afraid of the emotions it was going to bring up for me. I'd been avoiding a lot of the coverage for that reason. I have a strong connection to New York. I was born and raised in North Jersey. My first job was in the financial district where I met my husband. We commuted through the World Trade Center every day. And I actually was asked by our pastor to speak about my 9/11 experiences on Sunday, the actual day of the 10th anniversary, and I surprised myself by crying in front of the congregation. And so I was kind of thinking that would happen at the Field Museum because, as you can see, the pictures are rather intense. I spoke with a couple of folks that were there at the exhibit, and they expressed some similar feelings.
Of course, it brought back all the memories of that day and where you were and what you were doing at that time. Oh, it was just absolutely unbelievable. You know, that this could happen.
It still is.
And even though you didn't have loved ones there, you felt connected to those families.
You know, anywhere in the nation, you were connected to it, so.
You really don't remember it, do you?
I don't.
What do the photos tell you about that?
They say a lot. They're 1,000 words each.
I was really surprised by this couple's response because rather than dreading the exhibit, they actually sought it out.
I think too, now that we have a child, we want to, you know, at the right time, have him know what happened and know how important this moment was in our history. I want him to know how tragic it was when he's able to understand that, and then too, just how everyone came together. Like it really kind of, in the darkest time, showed how amazing people are.
I mean, as sad as it is seeing all this and seeing the missing persons posters and all that, somehow I get a strange sense of comfort in a way too, that knowing that everyone came together. And it's sad that it took something like that to get that feeling. And I don't know, maybe I'm missing that feeling, so it kind of, seeing the exhibit brings that back a little bit.
These two women who told me they were there with a church group from Granite City really had a very interesting comment that really got me thinking.
I think that when it first happened, there were people from all walks of life turned to God at that time. And it was like we were all united. And I don't feel like it's that way as much now.
What could bring us together again?
Turning to God.
Yes.
Turning to God.
Absolutely.
That's the answer. You know, us turning to Him. And our lands will be healed.
My first reaction when I heard her say that was I recoiled a little bit, I have to say. The way she phrased it right away made me think, you know, wasn't God part of the problem? Wasn't that the justification for the 9/11 attacks in the first place, that God was on the side of the attackers? And wasn't our response to 9/11, the military incursions into Afghanistan and Iraq, justified by saying that God was on our side? That kind of thinking caused the death of 2,977 people on 9/11, and they were citizens from 93 different countries. It wasn't just Americans. It was an indiscriminate kind of destruction. And by some conservative estimates, it's hard to estimate how many people have died in the last 10 years because civilian tallies are not kept officially. But a lot of groups try and make those estimates. And if you combine a very conservative estimate of civilian deaths with what we know about the number of American military personnel killed in the last 10 years, which is 6,204, with the number of Afghan and Iraqi security forces killed, you get a pretty big number. It's 154,775, which is over 50 times the number of people killed on 9/11. Now, where is God in all that? Of course, this is a question for religious people. It's not for agnostics or atheists who I think have a very legitimate critique of religion when they say that God tends to be a projection of our own positions on things, that we all believe God is on our side in these conflicts. I attended a conversation with community leaders that was recorded at WBEZ Radio, our local public radio station, and it was sponsored by the Project for Civic Reflection. And there were 22 of us, and there were only a couple religious leaders there, so I didn't expect religion and violence to be a big part of the conversation. But after it was over, I realized if we want to really move forward from 9/11, that issue of religion and violence is sort of the elephant in the room. It's the question that's not part of our public discourse that we need to talk about. When our military response ends up killing 154,000 plus people, we say we're simply seeking God's justice. Of course, mirroring what the terrorist attackers said as well. But a 50 times response is not justice. It's vengeance. And it's the word that we haven't been using to describe what we're doing. Justice is meant to have a punishment as part of it, but a punishment that is not cruel or unusual or excessive, right? That's what an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth is all about. It's about saying if you have to punish, punish in a way that isn't excessive, that is sort of an even-steven kind of punishment. And 50 times the deaths, including civilian deaths, which we claim was the worst and most impossible to understand part of the action of 9/11, that they were going after civilians. To do the same thing but only to a greater degree is not justice. And where is God in that? Is God's justice vengeance? A lot of religious people say so. I happen to be a religious person, and I don't say so. I think the atheists and agnostics are right when they critique religious people on that point. So I actually went back, obviously, and listened to that comment again, that we should turn to God. And that would be the cure for the problems. That would heal us. And I realized that she didn't say we should turn God towards us, that we should try and turn God to our side. She said we should turn toward God. And I wondered what we would see if we did that. If we would see that God was weeping with us for the 9/11 dead, but probably also weeping for the 154,000 that have been lost also in the last 10 years. Whose side is God on? My personal theology is that a God who takes human form to die as a victim of human violence is on the side of victims and is actually, I don't know what human emotion to put on it, upset, disappointed, discouraged, when victims respond to violence by creating more victims. I remember the early days after 9/11, and I do remember that sense of community, of coming together, of people responding to a tragedy by reaching out to help one another. And I think that honoring the victims of that day is an important thing to do. But I think that the best way to honor their memory is to dedicate ourselves to finding a way to deal with the violence and hatred in this world without creating more victims. I would love to hear from you if that makes sense to you, if you can imagine a new American goal or mission in the world that would really show leadership on this very important issue of how to build peace without violence. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much.